Okay, so hello everyone. I'm going to do a slight demo of Spriter, the animation program associated with Don't Starve mods. I am new to the program. I don't know everything there is to know about it, but I've got a pretty good handle on it, for the basics anyway. So hopefully I can shed some light on it for you and make it easier to get started. Now the first thing to note about Spriter is the project folder setup. Now this is the beanlets folder, and you'll see I have subdirectories for the different sprites, and the beanlet SCML file, which is where it stores all the animation data and whatnot. Now in this side folder I have a whole bunch of other things. In those there's more folders, just to keep everything organized, and I will show you why in a minute. Let's go to Spriter. Now see over here in the palette, after you've made your project, it will load in everything in that project folder in the subdirectories that you've created. So I can open the side and see all the different folders I had in there. So you'll see each one has everything nicely organized. This comes in really handy when you're swapping out sprites, so particularly for expressions. You'll see I have a whole folder dedicated to expressions, and it keeps everything together and makes switching a lot easier because of the way Spriter works. I'll show you in a minute. So after you've assembled your character, which I've already done here, which is as simple as dragging each part in, like so, and aligning everything however you want it. Once you've got everything in place, despite the fact that mods do not support conversion of bones yet, I would recommend using bones, simply because animating without them is a nightmare, and hopefully bone support will be implemented very soon. But you can apply the same sort of methods simply by setting up the pivots, changing those, rotating based on the pivot, and simply eye matching everything. But we don't want to do that because we don't want to drive ourselves insane. So what you'll see over here is the creature, the beanlet, and beneath that are the different animation states. Now you can make a new one just by clicking this button over here, or you can duplicate an existing one. For good measure, I keep the assembled and rigged model in one file, so I can duplicate that and do any animation from there. So this is your blank slate, where you keep no animation, just assembled and rigged. Then you can start animating. So all I need to do is clone that, and I can safely animate everything. I don't have to redo all of the rig. You can add new entities, but we don't need to do that just yet. Adding new entities would simply be to cut down the number of Spriter files that you would use. Okay, so here is one of the animations that I created for this. So this is your playback, obviously. Play and pause, rather self-explanatory. What you can do to jump through keyframes is use the 1 and 2 keys. 2 will send you to the next keyframe, while 1 will go back, which is really handy for jumping through frames and making sure that everything matches up when you're trying to eye match. So you'll be doing a lot of this if you're not using bones. In this case, I did it a lot for animating the legs. Since I do not have the Pro version, which does not, rather the free version does not have an IK system, so you have to animate legs staying in place the hard way. But no matter. So you can skip between those. Also down here we have a bunch of options. Playback speed, you can type a value in there or slide it. Current time will tell you the frame that you're on. And this over here is the maximum frames. The way Spriter works is in milliseconds, so each frame is 1 millisecond, which to an animator can be interpreted as 1,000 frames a second, which is just mind-blowing. So the way I prefer to work is if you click on the frame range, you can type a value, and there's also a stretch keys option. So what I like to do is use a value that I'm comfortable with animating. You'd likely want to choose either 24 or 30 frames a second. 30 is what the game uses, but since we're going to work with milliseconds anyway, it doesn't matter, work with whatever you like. And when you're done, so you bring this down to 24 or 30, do your animating as if it were regular 24 or 30 frames a second, each frame as a frame. Then you can go back and use the stretch keys and scale it back to whatever it needs to be. So if you have, say, a 1 second loop at 24 frames a second, you can tick stretch keys, type 1,000 back in, and it will take your 24 frames per second animation, stretch it back out to the 1,000 frames or the 1,000 milliseconds. It's not the most ideal way to work, but it's probably the most comfortable for an animator. Unfortunately, you can't play back the animation at correct speed like that. So if you want to get a solid playback, you either need to stretch it back out to 1,000 frames a second and play it back at 100%, or you can get in the ballpark by bringing the playback speed down to about 2%. Unfortunately, you can't do point percentage, so it has to be a whole number. You can't do 2.5%, which is unfortunate. So you can see there's also the name, which tells you what file you're working with, what animation state you're working with. And the key selected and key all buttons, which obviously key the selected attribute, or selected object rather, or all objects. You really only want to use the key all on the first and last frames. Everything else, key selected. You don't want to be putting keyframes on things that don't need it, basically. And loop playback, you can tick on or off. Since we're going to be working mostly with cycles, you're going to want to just leave that on generally. Okay, now over here we have the Z order, which even though Spriter is a two-dimensional animation program, you can think about it in three-dimensional space. There's the X and Y values, X going across, Y going up and down, and the Z order, which is front to back. Now, since it's flat, you don't really see a Z-axis, but there is the order, which is not unlike a layer system, like Photoshop or something. So, you can see, mousing over it will highlight what it is, and each part is layered appropriately. And it does save the Z order on a per keyframe basis. So if you set a keyframe on the an object and then set another keyframe and change the Z order, it will shuttle between those as you play the animation, which is how you'd have things start in front and go behind. So that's handy. Now here's the hierarchy tab, which is very important. Now I'm using bones here. At present, it does not support bones, or the tools, the conversion tools don't support bones, which is terribly unfortunate because it's really the only way to work without wanting to shoot yourself. Otherwise you have to literally eye match everything, and that's just not a good way to work. I'll do some more on the bone structure later, but what you can see here, I've set up each bone. This is the root bone here, so everything is under this. If I move this, then everything else goes with it. Oops. So you can see here, that takes everything with it. Or I can move this, which just moves that. And you can rotate them, which is the great thing about bones. So even after I move, all of these are all over the place. I can still move this root bone and everything keeps its position, which is, you know, a very important thing when you're animating. This little crosshairs type thing is sort of the world space 0, like where they meet, that's your world space 0. So it's essentially where the ground is, where the shadow will be. You can scroll in and out to zoom, use your mouse wheel, or you can use the middle mouse button to pan across. Probably won't be needing to do a whole lot of that, but still. Okay, so I've done the hierarchy, the Z order. Object properties. Now at present you can't key individual values, which is unfortunate, but it may be coming in a later update, which is good. Now, under the object properties, you see X and Y, those are translation values. So if you move this, X translation, Y translation, X scale, Y scale, rotation angle, and alpha. Now all of these are the keyable attributes. So these, when you set a keyframe, these are the attributes that are saved in that keyframe. Now you also notice, actually no, better example. If I select the beanlet face, this is where the subfolder ordering comes in very handy. If I right click on it, doesn't want to do it. That's strange. Okay, anyway. B1 expressions. Okay, so if we select the bean face, and here we have all our expressions. Now to switch between them, you can simply right click and it will swap between that sprite. So that's how you get the shifting sprites. And it's also why it's important to have everything on sprite cards that are exactly the same size for proper alignment between swapping, so you don't have to go realigning everything when you swap. Now you see there's a little red dot on this. That is the pivot point. The pivot point is important for rotation and scale especially. The default pivot point is set to the top left corner. There are two ways to change it. You can click and drag it anywhere, and you'll see it goes grey. That means that you've moved the pivot point and it's saved that value. Now that also saves with a keyframe, so you can have a changing pivot point on an object. You'd use that if you were trying to have a box, I suppose, rolling down a hill. You could move it to each corner, rotate, move it to the next corner, rotate, something like that. Now what you can do, once it's in the right place, you can right click on the pivot point and overwrite default pivot to set it to the new position, or use default to set it back to where it was. Okay, now along the top you've got all the usual undo, redo, all that stuff. The important ones you're going to want are the show bones, lock bones, show sprites, and lock sprites. When you're animating with bones, you're going to want to lock sprites, so that way we can't accidentally move something out of the way, because while you are animating with the bones, you can still animate the sprites independently of the bones. So I can rotate this here and then move this part over there, and it does its own thing. This is actually particularly useful if I had like a chain of things, with this, because I've set it up really well, I can scale everything. For squash and stretch. So I think that's all the basics. And lock bones, obviously, locks the bones. So if you don't want to select the bone while you're trying to grab something. You can also hide bones if you just want to see the sprite. Lets you see, well, there you can see right there. It's saved that. So, let's change that back. Face 1. There. Okay. So, you don't need all that. So, basic animation is done in there. Okay. What I'll do here, I'll clone the rigged file, show the bones. Okay. Just delete all these bones and demonstrate how to set up the bone rig. Okay, so no more bones, and the Spriter all assembled. So first what you would do is drag each thing in from the palette, arrange it, set up your Z order correctly, and then you can start crafting bones. Now the way you do that is you hold Alt and drag wherever you want your bone to go. Unfortunately, I have not found a way to freeze the values of a bone, so you start with various translation, scale, and rotation values. If you zero all of those out, it will end up at world space 0. So it's an absolute position rather than a relative position to where it was created, for better or for worse. So here I have the main bone, which just to make it easier to see, 0 out rotation. So that's what we're going to want to use for the center of gravity. Usually the hips is where you'll place that, around there. And just to make it easy, let's do a couple legs. So we want, if you select a bone, hold Alt and drag, the next bone that's created becomes a child of the last bone that was selected. So I select it again, hold Alt, do another leg. So I have 2, but nothing's connected to them just yet. So if I rotate this, you'll see they're connected. Now, the way you want to hook up all the sprites is you need to go into the parent mode. Now to do that, you hold B, and anything you click, you'll see it goes transparent when you hold B. Anything you click becomes a child. And you'll notice it is selected in the side. Alternatively, you can just go through the hierarchy, select everything, and drag it into the bone. Should work. Dipped. Oh well. Spriter is kind of buggy at the moment. It's still in beta. Okay, so I've got everything under the root for that, and then I can put this in there. Oh dear. Bones can also be created on a per frame basis, so if you need to add something as you go along, it is possible. You don't have to start all over again. But let's just delete that frame. Whoa, what happened there? Okay, so that's strange. Ignore that. Once you've set up your rig, which, let's go back to rigged properly file. So you've got everything set up, and on a per frame basis, move into position, and anything you move is automatically keyed, something I don't like, personally. So if I move over here, see, that automatically shows up. Spriter creates linear tweens between different keyframes. So to make things flow nicely, I had to do a bit of work. It's not the most elegant solution, but it does the job. A bit laggy because I'm recording at the moment. So after you've got everything in position, you animate it how you need to, and it will loop back to the start. So that's the very important thing. You want to make sure the start and end frames are identical. Now, if for some reason you've got keyframes on something where you don't want them, say you moved it and it automatically created a keyframe, or say I wanted to go here and get the value of translation from there. This is one of the really annoying things actually. If I copy this value, click off, you'll see it's created a key here on the bean one. Now all of these you'll see on the left here, it's probably a bit small to read, but you'll see there's all the different bones make sure you name everything so you can tell what's what. And this is where you control what has keys and when. So you'll see in this case, not everything is keyed at all times. And if you need to delete something, you can just select the little dot and hit the delete key or backspace key. Another thing to be aware of while using Spriter, if you try to select multiple things, you would expect to be able to hold Shift and click more, but that doesn't work. I found on the Mac version you have to hold Command. On Windows or Linux it's probably Control, but you can select multiple things and move them together if you so desired. I think that's everything we need. I hope that's all made sense. If you do have any more questions, just ask. Again, I do not know everything about this program, so I'm still learning. There are probably a whole load of features I haven't discovered yet. It's quite likely that there will be more features very soon, and there are even more features in the Pro version, which I don't have. But again, support at the moment is limited. Actually, I'll give a quick demo of using no bones. Okay, so here's how you work without bones. The painful way, as I implied earlier. You can see here in the hierarchy we have absolutely no bones. There's nothing parented on anything else. You cannot parent any objects to another object. So let's go to see the front walk animation. Yeah, okay, so you'll see here I've got some OK animation. All loops back. But to do that, it was quite a task. So I'll just copy this and show you what you have to do. So you'll see here, I've got the pivot point set up. Now, I'm not trying to do anything nicely animated, so this is going to look really rough. But let's say we want to make the character here wave. Now, with bones, we can do that really easily. So I can just set up a quick chain, like so. does a really quick bone rig, and you'll see I can just rotate everything into position nicely and animate like that. Everything stays together just like we'd want it, but we can't use bones, so delete all those. And show you how to do it the hard way, which is the not fun way. So set a position in the middle somewhere, and using the pivot point, so we just rotate this, and you see that the other things don't follow. So to get those back into place, we have to move them manually and eye match it as best we can. Use the 1 and 2 keys to shuttle back and forth between them. So tweak it little by little, and make sure it looks like everything's staying together. A bit better. You can select 2 things at once and move them, which is about the only thing that will make doing things this way a little easier, but it's still very, very tedious, very hard to get everything to line up. So everything's just kind of floating to the side. Flipping back and forth between the frames. The only trick you can do is try and line it up with features of the art. It's a real pain to get everything lined up like that. Especially when you have to do that for every single frame, every part of the creature. And it's linear tween too, so it's even more problems. Just a quick death animation here. Actually no, that's probably not the best example, since everything's kind of separate there anyway. How about the front walk? Here we go. So you see, it all looks like it's hooked together, but everything is literally just floating in space, and it's faked to look like it's holding together. So things like that, keeping them, maintaining their position and looking like they're one cohesive object is very difficult without bones. So it is possible. It's just about 10 times as much work, if not more. I mean, that was a simple animation there, and it took quite a long time. Unlike with bones, it's a lot faster to do more complex animation. So there you can see some Z-order animation. If you watch the Z-order list. So I hope that's covered everything. Just ask if you have any questions. Hopefully I can help.